We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. Hey guys, I want to welcome you guys to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. We've got a great episode this week. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notifications bell, and be sure to like, comment, and share if you like this episode. And we'll get into this week's sponsor and show. This week's episode is sponsored by CityVest. CityVest has quickly become the most popular and best way for doctors to invest in top-performing real estate private equity funds that are usually reserved for institutional investors. This unique access to investing in these institutional funds is available for the first time ever through CityVest's easy and secure online investment platform. CityVest does the hard work of conducting due diligence and vetting the investments. They even get a third-party due diligence report that is posted on their website. As a result of aggregating a several $million investment amount into their access funds, CityVest gains access to investing in the institutional investment and is able to negotiate better investment terms such as a 12% preferred return. You can check them out at cityvest.com or go to the link in the show notes below. Now on to the show. Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And my mission is to empower physicians to achieve financial independence and financial freedom early on so that they can practice medicine on their own terms as opposed to having to practice. So I tout 4 types of freedom. The first is financial, second is emotional, time, and location freedom. And my mission is to bring guests that are doing innovative, creative things outside the box and to show you what's possible so that you can design your best life in your business, finance, career, family, and relationships. So without much ado, we'll bring on this week's guest. So welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And my mission is to empower physicians to achieve financial independence and financial freedom early on so that they can live life on their own terms and practice medicine because they want to, not because you have to. And so in that respect, I always look for guests who are doing very interesting things, cutting edge things, really new things to bring it to your awareness. So today we have Dr. Andrew Wilner, and he's really an interesting guest, just speaking to him pre-show. So he's a neurologist, he's a health journalist, and also an avid scuba diver. And he's done so many interesting things. He's written a book, The Locums Life, A Physician's Guide to Locums Tenens. He's also got a podcast, Art of Medicine with Dr. Andrew Wilner, and he also has his own YouTube channel. And so without much ado, we bring Dr. Wilner on the show and welcome.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here.
Yeah, and I know you and me, we've spoken on some of the same conferences, and that's how we got connected. And you're talking about your latest ventures. So tell us all about yourself, your background. I'm always interested in how people got to where they became and what they're doing now.
Well, first of all, Chris, I got to say that I wish I had met you 40 years ago. Because it's late in my career now to live financially free at an early age. but it's still a goal. It's still a goal. But yeah, so my I have a day job. I work full time as a neurologist. I'm division director of neurology at Regional One Health in Memphis, Tennessee,
Mhm.
and associate professor of neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. And I love that. I love to teach, and I love seeing the patients we have in the community hospital who are by and large are indigent and pretty sick. So I
Mhm.
feel like I'm not spinning my wheels there. It's really worth it to go in every day because the patients patients really need you. So
Mhm.
that's a lot of fun. But I've had a long career of writing. I don't know, when I was like 12 years old or something, I decided that that was what I was born to do.
Mhm.
And so it's been many, many years of trying to juggle writing, which is demanding. Well, it may look easy, but it's pretty demanding. And medicine, which of course, if you're going to do it properly, is also demanding. So having two demanding careers has been a lifelong challenge, and I think that's what led me to locum tenens, which I've worked off and on since 1981. I took
Wow.
my first locums job in an ER, a
Mhm.
job. In those days, you didn't have to be an ER doc to work in an ER. And thankfully, they've changed that. But, I delivered babies and set broken bones and removed foreign bodies out of people's eyes. And I did all kinds of things that I kind of learned on the fly.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but it was a great year because I was writing a book. I worked three 12-hour shifts, so 36 hours a week, which for physicians like half time, right? And then I had 4 full days to myself to work on my book. And a
Wow.
few things happened. I finished the book, although I was unable to publish it. There was no self publishing option in those days. And the reviews I got, well, this is a great book, Dr. Willer, but we don't have any titles like it. And I said, well, yeah,
Mhm.
that's why I wrote it. But it turns out that publishers like to have other titles, that they can compete with. If you write a book that no one else has written before, they
Mhm.
don't want to touch it because they're not sure whether it'll sell. It's like, wow, what a paradox. Anyway, the other thing I learned was that I love neurology,
Yeah.
which I didn't know. I was my plan was to do internal medicine because my role models were all these very kind of cognitively excellent internists. That was the big thing back then.
Mhm.
But when I did my internship, it was like, well, everything was the same: cardiology, renal, GI, all interesting. And but then I did this year on my own of ER, and it was like, wow. Patients came in, they're double vision or cross-eyed, or one side of their body was numb,
Uh-huh.
or they couldn't speak properly, and 10 minutes before they were fine. It's like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. Very, very challenging. And so I ended up completing my internal medicine residency and then doing a neurology residency in Montreal at McGill at the
Uh-huh.
Montreal Neurologic Institute, and then staying another year for a fellowship in epilepsy. So 7 years
Wow.
of formal training. So the residents don't get any sympathy from me when they complain about how hard they work and they leave at 5. It's like, oh yeah, right. Um, so
Yeah.
along the way, I've written 4 books, and the last one, as you said, was The Locum Life: A Physician's Guide to Locum Tenens. I was looking to write another book, and I realized there was nothing. There were a couple pamphlets, and of course, on the internet, there's a lot of information, but you have to curate it, right? Because a lot of it comes from the staffing agencies, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not. It's like getting information from the pharmaceutical company. You have to sort of look at it critically. So I
Mhm.
said, I've had a lot of experience. I've worked inpatient locums, outpatient locums, academic locums, non academic locums.
Uh-huh.
So I wrote a book about it, and it was fun to kind of put it all together. And it's a great way, I found it. Locums, it turned out, when I looked in retrospect, helped me enormously. First,
Mhm.
as I said, it helped me figure out what I wanted to do, which was do neurology. Later, it helped me travel. I had a conventional job, becoming a partner. I became a partner. I was in practice as a neurologist,
Hmm.
but I got a little itchy. It was very hard to take time off.
Yeah.
I'm a scuba diver, as you mentioned, and of course, that kind of lay fallow for a while. I was in med school and residency. Every now and then, I'd get maybe a few days in every year. I'd say I want to do more than that, so I planned this big trip to Southeast Asia, to
Uh-huh.
Malaysia.
Oh, wow.
17 days. 17 days. It was like huge. 17 days. I had to, plan it out 6 months in advance so I didn't have clinic patients coming in. My partners were all in a tizzy that I was going to take so much time off.
Hmm.
So I went to Malaysia. It was unbelievable. I'm pretty well traveled, but Malaysia was different. I went to an orangutan rehabilitation center.
Oh,
I went
wow.
to an island that's surrounded by sharks and dove with the sharks and all kinds of other stuff. And later there was a kidnapping on that island, and luckily I wasn't there. But it was a great adventure, and I came back, and all my patients had survived. There was like a mile high pile of charts on my desk. But
Uh-huh.
it was an eye opener, that I really felt constrained, let's put it that way.
Hmm.
So when the opportunity came up to do locums, I started working just enough to earn what I needed to live on. And I
Hmm.
live a fairly Spartan lifestyle. And so I would save money. And then I went back to Southeast Asia, and I'd go back for 3 months at a time.
Oh,
And then I'd
wow.
come back and work for 3 or 4 months and then go back. Eventually, I had an apartment that I just kept over there,
Uh-huh.
and I'd fly back and go to my little place, and I would write every day, and because that's what I always do. And then I'd take some time off and go diving. And it's like, I mean,
Wow.
it was unbelievable. It was just like, gee, I didn't know doctors could do this.
Yeah.
And what worked for me was that when I'm at work, I like to be 100% present.
Hmm.
And so when I was doing my locums assignments for 3, 4, 5 months, it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is great. This is a wonderful, put a spin on it. This is a great opportunity to practice medicine and make some money. And then when the assignment was over, it's like, I'm on my way to the airport.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have to sign charts. I don't have to take phone calls. There's
Hmm.
there's nothing that trails you after a locums assignment. You're just done and you walk away. It's like being in the military, you just transfer from one base to the next and pick up the job, and that's what you do. And that I did that for about 10 years, back and forth. I ended up leading medical missions to the Philippines, getting my dive master certificate, making some underwater movies. I met my
Oh.
wife over there. We now have a baby. It was life changing,
Uh-huh.
really life changing. The other way that locums helped me is I mentioned the baby. So when we were thinking about the baby, I was thinking, well, maybe I don't want to travel so much. And I was traveling for locums. I was flying off for a week, coming back for a week. So I started looking for a permanent position.
Hmm.
I looked for 2 years for that permanent position because I decided I wasn't going to take anything that I didn't really want.
Uh-huh.
And what was great about it was I'd go to an interview and the salary would be pretty good and the job would be pretty good. And it was like, yeah, I could do this. This isn't bad. But it's not really what I want. So I would just say no. It's like, I got a great locums gig going. I don't need this. Whereas if I hadn't had the locums kind of fallback position, it's like, gee, I better take this job. It's a pretty good one. It's not perfect. But I didn't have to. So I didn't. And then finally, I stumbled on the job I got right now. And it's like, wow, this is just what I'm looking for. It's academic, it's teaching, it's week on, week off. I don't have to travel. Cost of living's not bad. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. Uh, there's a few too many shootings every day. But there's always a downside. But I've moved out in the suburbs where it's a little safer. And I really love the hospital. But of course, they offered me a very low salary.
Oh.
And so I just said no. Like, no. And, 30 years ago, when I entered academics for the first time, they offered me a salary. I said, okay, because I figured, that's what the job is. It's like you go to the supermarket and the can of milk is $3.79. You don't say, well, how about 3.50, right? I
Right.
mean, I thought I was pretty naive then, but I learned. So I just said no. I said I'm
Mhm.
happy doing what I'm doing, and that's not enough for me to give up, moving around. And even though it looks like a cool job, I said you got to do better than that. Give me a call.
Mhm.
And I was able to walk away. And of course, that's the key to any negotiation is you have to be willing to walk away, right?
Mhm.
And you always see that in the movies. The guys are bartering, so I go, oh, that's too much, and he walks away. And then the other guy starts chasing after him. Well, we could do a little better. So but I didn't mind because I was happy doing locums and it was just fine. Well, sure enough, about 3 weeks later, I get this phone call. It's like, well, it's a long story, and they offered me just enough to make it kind of worth my while. So locums gives you leverage.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of my favorite TV shows, by the way, Leverage. It's just great, and it's rare that you have any leverage in this world. So it's nice to have locums, and locums right now. I even though I actually do locums uh, presently at the VA. There's a VA 2 blocks from where my regular job is, and they're really seriously understaffed. So sometimes I help them out. It helps them, and I make some extra money, and it kind of keeps me in the locums world. Um, but there's such a huge demand. I got a call today. The highest rate I've ever been offered for 1 week on, 1 week off. It was
Mhm.
pretty tempting, and then I was like, oh, but I already have a job. I don't think So it wasn't that high that I was going to quit.
Yeah.
But, and that's the other thing. Every now and then, you talk about burnout. I usually have a very good day at work, but every now and then you kind of have a bad day. And you kind of have, and my face will just sort of light up. It's like, you know what? I can leave.
Mhm.
No problem. If I really want to, I can leave and I can just get locums positions that will pay me as much, if not more, but
Yeah.
a little more hassle, right? You're traveling, you're negotiating new contracts, you're going to new places, new EMRs. Locums, it's still work, right?
Mhm.
And whenever there's a lot of first days in locums. And,
Mhm.
as a resident, I'm sure you remember, first day on a new service, you don't really know the rules. And locums is like that, a lot of first days.
Mhm.
So I had to work pretty hard on my people skills and flexibility skills. Things
Yeah.
never go the way you expect. You got to, and if they need you as a locums physician, they're going to pay you all that money. There's a reason, right? There's a reason. It's because
Exactly.
it's not the ideal job, or somebody else would be there, or they wouldn't have left.
Yeah.
Um, Although I have to say that I was enormously lucky. I worked locum tenens at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. It was a wonderful place to work. I learned a lot, and I had fun with the residents, and they were great patients. I worked locum tenens at Hennepin County Hospital in Minnesota. Great training programs there. It's like every other internist you meet trained at Hennepin. They have like the biggest training program in the country, and it's a
Uh-huh.
nice county hospital. I saw a case of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in
Oh, wow.
my 5 months there. I couldn't believe it. You know, whenever you put Creutzfeldt-Jakob in the differential diagnosis, you're usually going to be wrong because it's
Mhm.
pretty rare. So I always tell the residents, you're probably going to be wrong if that's what you think it is because it just doesn't happen very often. But sure enough, so locums can be a lot of fun, and I think for all the reasons I listed above.
Mm. So yeah, it's very fascinating. And then you talk about locums. You have a lot of location, time freedom, a lot of flexibility. It gives you a lot of leverage. So if if people are interested in locums, what is the best way to get their feet in to get started, either after their training?
Yeah. So Well, the first thing to do is think about why you want to do it. For example, there are sort of three stages of your career. It's like, well, I've just finished my residency or fellowship and now I'm going to go to work. Locums for people like that is a chance to explore geography,
Mhm.
to explore work style. Do I want to be in a big clinic, solo practice, partnership, academics, without, making too big a commitment. It's another way a lot of people graduating, just finishing, have a partner who may be a year ahead or a year behind. It's a way to kind of tread water for a year while the other one catches up so you can both go somewhere together. Mid career guys, it's usually for extra cash. And then late career, it's, well, you don't really want to retire, you want to slow down. So to get started, at the risk of not being humble, I would certainly recommend reading my book, The Locum Life, A Physician's Guide to Locum Tenens. Uh, if you don't want to read the book, I have a 5-minute video on each chapter on my website, andrewwilner.com. That's available for free. Just go to andrewwilner.com/videos. And there's a video on every chapter, malpractice, credentialing, travel, all the things that, you need to learn about. I just did actually a audible book version of my book. So if you like to drive around and listen or work out, so I narrate it 6 hours, 45 minutes. There's an audible book, same title. And that was a lot of fun to do. And you can feel free to contact me also through my website, and I can refer you to staffing agents. You don't need a staffing agent. You just put your ear to the ground. You say, hey, I'm thinking of doing some, extra work. And it may turn out, that the internist, next door is going on maternity leave, right? And all of a sudden there's an opening and they'd be glad to have you, pick up some shifts. So that's the easy way to do it. And that's how I got my Mayo Clinic job, was just a colleague I met at a conference who I knew well. We were chatting and they were understaffed. Or you go to a staffing agency, and of course they have relationships with hospitals and clinics, and they'll tell you what's available. And but it is important to know, if you're going to be happy, why you're doing it. Are you just doing it to make some extra cash? That's fine. Are you doing it because you're trying to figure out what practice style works for you? You want to be a hospitalist or outpatient? So figure that out, and that'll make everything else much, much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some great tips. What are I know a lot of physicians are interested in the tax benefits. So if you could describe, how you set up a corporation. I know some like a lot of locums ER doctors, they set up an S corp, and a lot of their travel expenses, etc. They can write off because they get paid.
Yes,
And
yes,
so if you want to,
yes.
yeah, talk about that.
Right. I'll get there in a second,
Uh,
but I don't want to forget that if you do locums, you should have a CPA,
yeah.
certified public accountant, who can help you. And if you contact me, I know of two who specialize in physician clients, one of whom specializes in locum tenens physicians.
Mhm.
And he's actually my accountant now for the last couple of years, and is a wonderful guy and knows all of the tricks and rope, that you were talking about. So it turns out that if you're a locum tenens physician, you're considered to be your own business, or a self-employed person.
Mhm.
And self-employed people versus employed people, for example, you go to work every day and you get a paycheck deposited every 2 weeks. And at the end of the year, you get something called a W-2, and they take your taxes out of every paycheck before you even see it. So
Uh-huh.
that's an employee. But if you're a self-employed person, it turns out not only are you an employee, right, because you're working for someone, but you're working for yourself. So you're actually the employer. And
Mhm.
it turns out that the employer has certain tax advantages. So as the employer, you can put a lot of money away in retirement fund that you can't put in as an employee. But as an employee, you can also put in what you can put in as an employee. And then, as you mentioned, business expenses. When I go to the hospital every day for my employee job, if I buy a computer so I can, get remote access, that's a business expense, but not as far as the government's concerned because I'm an employee.
Mhm.
However, if I am a self-employed locum tenens physician and I buy a computer because I need it to keep track of all my expenses, that for locums, then that is a tax deductible expense. So by having this, even if it's in addition to your other job, like I have two jobs, right? I'm a self-employed locum tenens physician and right now an employee. You can do it both ways. So this is where it gets, a little sophisticated. I don't give accounting advice, but what I've learned, I have been able to put much more money into my 401k than I would have been able to as a employee, and my income tax has been reduced because I'm able to deduct my business expenses from my gross income. In terms of corporation and all that, I talked to my CPA about it a few times, and he didn't think it was necessary in my particular case, right? But, finance is never one size fit all, but it's actually not even necessary. So you don't have to concern yourself with that. It may be advantageous, in your particular situation, but working locums is basically you sign a one-page contract and you show up and, you take care of patients, you sign your charts and you go home and you're done. So the simplicity of it is beautiful compared to owning your own practice, which I did, and all the personnel hassles and politics hassles. I mean, the beauty of it, you just show up, the place is usually a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. It's not your problem, your job. Do the best you can under the circumstances, taking care of patients, what you went to medical school for,
Mhm.
and then go home, go hiking, save your money for Southeast Asia. It has a lot of benefits.
Yeah. So, um, and I know, so what type of individual, like if you're single or you're married, if you have kids, what are the sort of downsides of locums that you've encountered?
Yeah, so of course there are downsides. I mean, it's obviously perfect if you're single and you can just do whatever you want without consulting anyone.
Mhm.
And you also have to have cash flow can be an issue. Locum tenens contracts can be canceled up to 30 days before they start, and that happens to everyone. I've
Mhm.
had two contracts. I was going to start September 1, and on I guess it was sort of it would have been July 31st. I got an email. The hospital decided they don't need you. And
Oh.
so the whole plan is off.
Mhm.
So you have to have, I always recommend 6 months of money in the bank, right, for all of your expenses. In my case, if somebody canceled, it's like, okay, I'll go work on my book for a month.
Mhm.
So it wasn't a tragedy. But if you're somebody that, lives paycheck to paycheck because you've got, 3 kids in private school and a big mortgage on your house and, 6 cars, locums may not work for you. And it may
Mhm.
just be easier just to have a regular, every 2 week paycheck and just do your job.
Mhm.
So it's certainly not for everyone as a, full-time gig. It can be good if you, on vacation time or do a little bit here, a little bit there, like I do at the VA, just to pick up some extra money. And, it's kind of fun to take care of the veterans. It's a different environment. They have slightly different problem sets. So it widens your horizons. But certainly the cancellations, I would say, are a big thing. Getting paid's not a problem. Staffing agencies, they're pretty responsible. They do direct deposit these days. You have to pay quarterly taxes. You got to stay on top of your expenses. And if you're full-time locums, you got to get your own health insurance.
Uh-huh.
And, you don't get any benefits with locums because, well, as I said, you're the employee and the employer, right? So
Yeah.
unless your employer gives you benefits,
Yeah.
which is you, you're not going to get any. So, but the only benefit you really need is health insurance,
Yeah.
and that's costly. So when I was working locums full time, I went through I think it's not the Better Business Bureau. It's one of those local business organizations, and I was able to get sort of a discounted rate as an independent business, the way you would if you had a little shop. But health insurance these days is very, very expensive,
Uh-huh.
and you have to budget for that. You
Yeah.
definitely have to budget for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've described a very interesting way of making either main income or side income. So I know a lot of physicians are interested, and I know with for example, emergency medicine, anesthesia, a lot of specialties are going into this locums model. So very fascinating story and just a lot of wisdom. How can, if people are interested in your books or getting in contact with you, how can they contact you?
Best way is andrewwilner.com. Of course, the book's on Amazon,
Mhm.
and you can get it at a little lower rate if you get it through my website.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, and I'm happy to answer questions. I take questions all the time. I don't charge anything. I give you 15 minutes. It's great. If that can help your life. I'm a doctor. I like to make people's lives better.
Yeah.
And if a few words of advice is going to set you in the right direction, I'm happy to provide it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so. Yeah. For all the listeners, we'll put all of Dr. Wilner's advice and all of his resources in the show notes. And any parting words of wisdom before we call it a day?
Well, I did forget to mention that I have a podcast,
Mm.
and I often have guests that discuss locum tenens. That's how the podcast started. It was all about locums, and now I've expanded it. That's The Art of Medicine. So it's The Art of Medicine with Dr. Andrew Wilner. You can watch it on YouTube or on your favorite podcast player. It streams every 2 weeks. We're up to episode 50 something now. It's a lot of fun. It's about 20 minutes, and I have really interesting guests. And every now and then we have a locums person. So that's something to check out too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And we look forward to having you on the podcast again as a future guest or, even for a master class. So thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun, Chris. Thank you.
Mhm. What a fantastic show. I hope you enjoyed our very special guest. Just remember, as a shout out to our this week's sponsor, cityvest.com. CityVest gives you access to the best real estate private equity funds with enhanced investment terms, verified due diligence, and lower risk. You can check them out at cityvest.com or click on the link in the show notes below to hear about their upcoming investment offerings. I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislumdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.